Let's turn now to Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, who was White House Director of Communications under President Trump for all of 11 days and who has become a consistent Trump critic. Best known in this country, perhaps, these days for his hugely successful podcast, The Rest is Politics US. Anthony, very good to have you on the show. Let me start by talking about the Trump Labour Party row, because, it's a lot of anger being expressed from his campaign, and it's very personal, and it's very historic, and all the rest of it. But I said just now that I thought it was mainly chaff. It was a distraction operation. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it's a total distraction. He's got $1 million a day coming out of Elon Musk's checking account, which is questionable. The Department of Justice just notified Elon Musk that they think what he's doing is illegal. You've got the situation with the Russians interfering with the social media in the election. You may know this, but the Department of Justice, CIA, uncovered payments that went to lots of podcasters and social media influencers in the United States from the Kremlin. They shut that down, of course, but most of it, if not all of it, was tied to Donald Trump. And so this is a flare to send up to partially eclipse the nonsense that's going on his side. And, just there's a lot of projection, frankly. But I think the central question for your listeners and your viewers is, would it have an impact should he win? Will it affect his relationship with Keir Starmer? And I'm going to tell you something very contrarian, okay? Lots of people think that it would have an impact. I would predict that it would have absolutely no impact because Trump knows it's BS, and Trump knows he has to have a good relationship with the Brits, and Trump likes the Brits. And I'll just say this, he's an Anglophile. He loved the interaction that he had with the Queen. He's a royalist, and so I don't know if your viewers and listeners like that or dislike that. I don't know who's listening to your show, but Trump is a royalist, and so he wants to have a good. He wants to have a good relationship with the United Kingdom.
Well, that's actually very, very. When I start an interview, I never know whether it's going to be reassuring or scary news I'm bringing people. Well, this is quite reassuring. This is something, and I guess he's also a deal maker, and he'll see this event as being in the past, and he then moves on to the next relationship, the next deal he wants to do with the British.
No question. And I'll tell you something. Like, I fight with him all day, and we spar all the time. But if he saw me, he would be charming to me. That's his nature. Moreover, he invites people back. David McCormick, you may or may not know that name. He's running for the Senate, and he's a Republican running for the Senate. Trump dissed him in 2022. He went with Mehmet Oz, the reality show host, who lost to Fetterman in Pennsylvania. Now McCormick is running against Bob Casey. Trump is with him. Trump likes the rotisserie, likes the revolving door. He fired Corey Lewandowski. He brought Corey Lewandowski back into the campaign. He's going to want to have a positive relationship with Prime Minister Starmer. There's no reason for him not to.
It's often hot and it's often angry, but it's never forever. Let me turn to the actual campaign itself and where we got to now.
Can I use that with my wife? That's actually a pretty good one. I may bring that into my domestic conflicts.
That's up to you.
Okay.
That's very much up to you. Let me ask you about what's going on. Now, you are, I'm told, a surrogate for the Kamala Harris campaign. Just explain to people listening what a surrogate actually is.
So I've been on the campaign trail for her. I was knocking on doors for her in Pennsylvania over the weekend. I've done several postings for her. We wouldn't call it a campaign stop because I'm not a candidate, but I've gone to speak on the campaign's behalf at various events in the state of Pennsylvania. I've also done local radio for her. In addition to providing advocacy on the garden variety cable networks, one thing that the blue collar people listen to in the United States is local radio and local news. And the main reason for that, most of these people are working outside. They want to get a sense for the weather. So I've been spending a lot of time in the swing states using Zoom, using telephones and so forth, speaking on her behalf.
So that answers a problem, because surrogate in this case means sort of hyperactive supporter. You don't look, if I may say so, like Kamala Harris. You don't sound like Kamala Harris, but you're a supporter. You're out there on the campaign trail for her.
I'm also, but I have my Team America shirt on. See, I've got my little
You do,
Minion. Yes, yeah. So I'm carrying the Team America flag, and remember, I'm good friends with General Kelly, and so I've had 2 or 3 conversations with General Kelly leading up to this admission of listening to Trump talk about the praise of Adolf Hitler and wanting his generals to act like Hitler's generals.
Now, we're absolutely at the stage where things are on a knife edge, and no one is actually calling this confidently at the moment. If Trump wins, do you think we're going to see real trouble in America? If Trump doesn't win, are we going to see real trouble on the streets?
Okay, so Trump is a very complicated person. So there's people inside his campaign that tell me he wants to win because it's a personal vendetta. He's 78 years old. He's going to go play golf in Florida, and he's a star seeker, and he'll put lots of well-known people in his cabinet, and you won't be near, it won't be that much different from the first administration. There's another group of people inside that are saying, well, he's going to cling to some of these alt-right people, and he's going to implement the policies that are written up in Project 2025. So we'll have to see what version of Trump we get if he does win. Okay, it is on a nice edge, but I've asked people this question: whose cards would you like 12 days before the election? I would take her cards over his cards. She's got,
really?
Well, I'll explain it in just three main reasons. Number one, she has money and a ground game. We don't know where his money is. He has no ground game. She's knocked on 1 million doors. They've knocked on very little doors. Number two, when she started, there was only one path for her. That was through the blue wall. That was Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Had to win all 3, or she couldn't get to the presidency. But since then, lots of other paths has opened. She's tied in Georgia. She's tied neck and neck in North Carolina. She has an outside shot in Nevada and Arizona, although Trump is up in those states. And so there are other pathways for her now, and she has the money to run a very aggressive campaign in those 7 states. And then the last thing I would say is there's more people that are registered as Democrats than there are as Republicans. And this is a get out the vote election. And so if she can organize and get her people out to the voting booths, she may nick him. It could be a 50, 49 and a half sort of election.
And if he's nicked, is there any chance of him accepting that?
Okay, so again, you're talking to a contrarian here. I hate to sound Pollyannish on your network, but he's got a looming sentence over his head. They moved the 34-count felony conviction sentencing to the 26th of November. That's exactly 3 weeks after the election. I don't think that was accidental. That was by design. That's messaging to him. F around and find out. Okay, so if he goes out there and he says, let's foment an insurrection, a civil war, I lost the election was stolen from me, they're going to send him straight to jail. The American government, I can assure you, does not want to send a former president to jail. They don't want to turn this into like a tit for tat where each opposition political opponent gets sent to jail from the adversary. They don't want that to happen. But if he is going to foment violence in the country, they will put him in jail. He knows that. I know a lot of things about this man, know him for 20 years, worked for him for 9 months, 11 days in the White House, but worked on the campaign. He does not want to go to jail. Trust me. If you told him you could win the election or not go to jail, okay, he would probably want to guarantee not to go to jail over anything else.
Yeah. Anthony, is it Anthony or Tony, by the way? I've been calling you Anthony. I'm not sure if that's right.
No, that's totally fine. Look, I've been called so much worse. I'm in politics. So
okay, we'll stick with Anthony.
You can call me anything you want.
You know the guy, and you've been giving us a really interestingly nuanced picture of who Donald Trump is tonight. Kamala Harris has come out and said that this man is a fascist. Do you think he's a fascist?
Yeah, he has fascist tendencies. If he didn't have the system of the American government and the 3 articles of the Constitution, he would love to rip that up. There's a very famous story where he's finger pointing at Paul Ryan, who was at that time the Speaker of our House of Representatives, and he was saying, "You work for me, blankety blank, you work for me." And Paul was saying, I actually don't work for you. I'm in a totally separate article of the Constitution. Trump doesn't like that, so yes.
No.
He has fascist tendencies. If he was in a system that could inspire fascism, he would be a fascist.
And in the same spirit, we heard from the former chief of staff him making remarks about how much he admired Hitler in certain respects. You were there for a long time. Did you ever hear him make those kind of remarks or something similar?
Again, because I know the SOB so well, he's making those remarks to needle people. He's trying to get under their skin. He knows that Kelly is a devout guy of moral rectitude. He knows Kelly, took an oath to the Constitution as a Marine. And so some of that stuff is to really get under Kelly's skin. And so, yes,
he's just
I've
winding
seen
him up, pushing off the balance.
Winding him up. And I've seen him do it to other people. Kelly also, was left out of the interview because I know the story well. Kelly said, you want to have Hitler's generals. They tried to blow his ass up in 1944, and they tried to kill him and they tried to poison him. And from your British history, some of the generals shared code with the British to help the British in the war because they wanted to undermine Hitler. And Kelly tried to point that out to Trump. But Trump really has a limited understanding of what goes on in history. And that's one of the many reasons why I don't want to see him return to the presidency. He's just intellectually curious. He has this weird love affair going on with Vladimir Putin that none of us can understand. He would undermine our alliances. He would cause us a big problem in the Ukraine. We have the opportunity for great peace and prosperity as a group of liberal democracies. Trump doesn't really like that or understand that. So I hope he doesn't win, and I'm working hard to see that he doesn't.
And in the end, your instinct is that the American people agree with what you've just said.
I think there are more of us than there are of him. He's running on a platform of misogyny, racism, cruelty, and anti-immigration. And I think if you take a step back and you look at that, most Americans are like, you know what? We don't want to go back to that. Let's stay the course with something more normal.
I hope to God that you're right. Anthony Scaramucci, thank you very much for talking to LBC tonight. It's really appreciated. Thanks, mate.